Good morning. Let's look at morphing some shapes. So we're going to build again on the things we've been learning over the last couple of weeks. And today, specifically building on yesterday and last Friday's subjects, we're going to look at how to transform one shape into another. And so we're going to look at really basic shapes today, but we're going to give some techniques that are going to make a lot of sense. Okay? So let's switch over to flow. And I'm going to create an empty timeline. And as I have been doing, I am going to change its size to 400 by 400. Again, I clicked on that lock and I changed the width, which also then changed the height. So let's do some basics here. Let's look at morphing a circle into a square and back again. So let's start with a rectangle, a square. And let's go ahead and make it, let's turn on relative mode, make it a little bit bigger. Let's say it's going to be up here. Click the lock. Let's make that 240. And then let's make it stroke width 20. Yeah, that looks good to me. So there are a couple of ways we can do this. And it really depends on, it does depend on what kind of shape you're starting with. And here, let me just see. So there's a couple of ways we can do this. And it really does depend on what kind of shape you're starting with and what your target shape is. And so there's lots of options for things like this. Like for instance, sometimes I like to start in Sketch, and depending on the kind of animation I'm trying to get, what I would do is I might even make a rounded rect in Sketch and flatten that. And what ends up happening is a Sketch rounds the corners. You end up having 8 points for your square with the curves between the 2 points at each corner. But suffice it, that's one way that you can draw and flatten things and then animate from there. It really depends on the aesthetic, but today's aesthetic is relatively simple. We're just doing a simple morph from one shape to another. And one of the techniques that you can think about is to always start with the shape that's a little bit more complex, or maybe it's the target shape or it's the shape that you want to go from. In the square and the circle are two sort of different shapes. I'll show you just in a second what I mean, but like the orientation of their points is different. And today I'm just going to start from the square because in my head I've found a way that is the easiest to get from a square to a circle. Okay, so I'm going with the easiest technique. First I want to mention what do I mean by there's something different between squares and circles. So when you create a circle, typically what you're going to see, let's make this one a nice bright color and give its outer edge a nice dark color for contrast, just like that. And we're going to make it just as big as this other one, 240. So just dragging that into position. We're super close. Let's call it 240. And actually, let's make that outer color. Something like that, okay. And we'll also make that 20. Okay, so we have a circle and a square. If I double click and I select the square, let's just select it here and hit enter. What we're going to get is we're going to get the start of the point, start of the path down at the bottom right. You're going to get 4 points, one in each one of the corners. Okay. If I undo, select that circle and hit enter, here what you're going to do is you're going to get your points here and here and here, and each one of those is going to have a mirrored set of control points. Okay. So how do you go from one to the other? Well, one way we could do this is like the kind of obtuse way, or the harder way, would be to think, well, I have to morph those points. Is to think like, I have to morph the points from one thing to another, okay? And this is a bit of a convoluted technique, but let me show you what I mean. So let's say I just move this over here. Whoops, I just want to select the one of them. And then what we would do is you could say something like, okay, well that goes to there, this goes to here, and this one goes right in the middle, just like that, yep. And this one comes down to the middle. And then what you might think is, okay, so I'm going to select this point, and I'm going to see that its X position for its mirrored is 66.10. And so I'll go like this, and actually I will select all of them. I'm going to make them all mirrored, and I'm going to shift select this one, and this one, and this one, and this one. Oh, no, I don't want the Y coordinate ones. I just want those two X's, and since they are mirrored and I do this, then we get that. And now I take this positive one, and this one right here, I'm shift selecting, and I make those 66.1. Okay, so there you have transformed the shape. And I did all of that with relative mode off. So let's just that's my frustration. Okay, so let's just undo and quickly go through that again. Okay, so what we ended up doing, let's make it here at the end. I ended up taking this one, and I'm shift selecting these, and these are both going to be 200 because they're right in the middle. And then again, this one and this one are going to be 200 on the Y coordinates. And then I select all of those. I'm going to make them mirrored, and then I'm shift selecting the first, or the positive control point, making it 66.1, and then I'm selecting the positive control point for the Y coordinates for these ones. And I think I've missed something here. Ah, look at that. And this one should be at interesting. $200. Oh, it's 240 by 240. Right, so this one should come down like that. And then this should come in by the same amount. I just got my numbers mixed up, so it wasn't quite a circle because the shape wasn't big enough. All right, so that position is at 200. So this one should be, that should be at 80. Yeah, let's make that 80. And then this one should be 400 minus that should be 320. And now we have our perfect circle. And it's animated. And what you're going to see is you're going to see this nice sort of like, you're going to see those curves change. Okay. But then you're also going to get these weird little moment at the beginning right here where, as I mentioned yesterday, these path points are going to change their type. Okay. So the other thing that we need to do here is we need to make this right here, we need to make it like 1, 1. So we say like, so 0.01, 0.01, something like that. Or we can make it 0, 0. And yep, that's what we're going to do with all of them. We're going to make this 0, 0. So the reason why that these things sort of turned into these curves is based on yesterday's concept of all the points. A shape needs to have a consistent amount of points across the entire animation, and all those points need to be the same type. So at the beginning, when we had created this square, the points were straight, right? So the one that has no curve on it. So when I switched them to create the circle, it switched the ones at the beginning, and then it added this tiny little weird sort of curvature stuff that we're getting rid of at the moment, okay? And that's, if you want to go a little bit deeper on that, just go back to yesterday's cast, FC28. So now we have, and now we have this weird animation that's happening, okay? And this behavior is totally expected. It's expected. Look at that weirdness. All right, why is something like this expected? Okay, so what's happening is, to get those perfect corners on that square, and depending on the animation that we're currently trying to do, we're actually trying to go from a sharp corner to a rounded corner. To get back to that sharp corner, what we've done is we've moved the control points so that they're right on top of the shape itself. But what's happening is just that instant, the first 100th of a second as they move out, right? The curves are so small that there's this thing that happens where it appears to go to infinity. And this is just a standard way that your animation engines are going to render shapes when they're super close together. It's kind of like the spikes that happen when we talked about the miter limit. I mean, I could go ahead and say the line join for this shape is mitered. Right, so we could say that they're all mitered, and that miter limit is 0. Yeah, but that's not even going to change anything because it's so small. Okay. And you're going to get this weird artifacting. Okay, so what's the point of me showing you all this? Okay, this is a roundabout way of me showing that just thinking about changing one shape to another by changing all of the points and trying to sync them up might not be the best way to go about doing that animation. Again, perception, okay? You don't need to do things literally sometimes. So let's do it the easy way now. Just get rid of this thing. Ugh. And we're gonna get rid of you. We're gonna add a new square, new rectangle, and make it 240 by 240. And what do we say? 32. Yeah, 32 is nice. Okay, step 1. Select them all. Double click in, select them all. You don't have to, but I did do it this way. Make it 120. There you go. We change the corner radius of the path. That's it. All right. And if we want to go back to that square, we make that corner radius down here. Corner radiuses are, double click in, select them all, and the corner radius right here is 0. There we go. So now we have an animation that goes from a circle to a square. Easy. So the corner radius, when I double clicked in and I selected the points, I selected them all, and then I changed the corner radius up here in the top right. So you see here it's 0, and then as I move that playhead, it changes and changes and changes all the way back up to 120. So it's 120, all right, to make a perfect circle. You got a square. To make a perfect circle from a square, it needs to round from the middle of the square to the middle of the square. And if the whole square is 240, halfway down the square where the arc should start is 120. That's why the radius is 120. All right, let's have another look at a shape morph. And let's call this one circle to square. And let's create a new timeline. Sometimes that little plus button is hidden. Let's say we want to go from a triangle to a rectangle. Again, turn on relative mode. We are going to say that this scene is 400 by 400. That's sitting nicely in the middle. And now let's make it the same size as before. Oh, 240, right? And this was 32. We're going to call our timeline triangle to square. And again, building again on principles from yesterday and what we talked about just a few minutes ago, every shape needs to have the same amount of points. So how many points does this triangle have? It has 3. And a square has 4. So at one point, so we definitely need to have 4 points in our shape. We need to have 4 points in our shape. So let's add one to this triangle. You can add it anywhere, actually. Let's do it. Option. Click. Now we have 4 points. And what is a square? Well, something's in the top right. Just pressing Command and Shift to snap things into place. And now we just kind of command snap this one right into place. Just like that. Okay, now we have our square. Oh, again, undo, undo. Let's go ahead and move that up, Command snap. And we are snapping just like that. There you go, there's our animation. So we're now going from a square to a triangle. And I did that at the beginning, so I'm just gonna reverse that and say, okay, our animation is like this. It is a triangle going to a square. And because of the position of where I placed that point, it sort of awkwardly comes out and animates up. So see, watch up here, this top right point. It's just going to animate from the original position that I created it at to the beginning. Okay. But this isn't quite what I want. What I want is a nicer version of this animation. So how do I go about... Ooh, look at that. Lost flow. Right back at you. Okay, so how do I go about getting rid of this? Well, it's a matter of just positioning this point. In some design tools, if you take a point and you drop it onto another point, it'll just delete that thing. But not for us. Right there, we actually have 2 points sitting right on top of one another right now. You see that? If I just drag one of them, there you go. One sitting on top of the other. And now I can hit play. All right. That's it. Pretty simple stuff. So we're just talking about perception. We're talking about perception and shape morphing. Shape morphing have the principles that we talked about yesterday and the day before. Every point needs to exist in the shape if it's morphing from one to another. If it is, yeah, and every point type needs to be the same. Those are like, that's one of the baselines. So then you have to think about like, how do I get from one shape to the other in the easiest way possible? We found that, you know, editing everything and thinking about it literally, like this point has to go to here and this one to here and this one to here and this one to here. And then I change from a sharp corner to a round, to a curved point corner. That might cause, like just thinking literally about things might cause it to behave in a strange way. So, don't do it. And the other technique that we looked at today was you can actually layer one point on top of another. So now the challenge is for you to create an animation that morphs from a circle to a triangle. All right, a circle to a triangle. And I will post in our Flowcasts channel and along with the files from today, an example of it. All right. So I'll see you tomorrow with the answer to that.